So here's an update video on the Lawson Chicken Tractor. Quite a few changes. We made this the first rendition of this coop back in spring. It's now winter. The biggest changes have really come with the feeders. Initially we went from a ductwork type feeder to this PVC feeder, which would give the chickens more access to it. But as they kept eating through that pretty regularly each day, and it really didn't supply them with enough food for each day, I switched to kind of a toolbox format, I guess. It really gives them a supply of food for about 2 days, which is much better than it was. We've had to add quite a few waters. So I have this simple water, and then we have the 5-gallon water. And then I've also added a door underneath so that the chickens are now free range, which might seem to kind of cancel out the idea of a chicken tractor, but the reason I had to do it was because one of the chickens was sick, so I wanted to separate it from the rest of the chickens. And when I cut out the chicken wire on the bottom, I just decided to replace it with a door. And the chickens actually seem to be much happier now that they're grazing, for the ones who can figure out how to get out anyway. I don't have to feed them as much, so it's cut down on my costs there. If you're wondering about this, very attractive thing. It's just a windbreaker, because the wind's pretty nasty around here and it's been cold today. Like Dad said, when winter came, we were going to put a cover on this door, which I just used some shingles. And then I've also rigged up a heat lamp on the inside, as you can see. This is actually the first day that I rigged it up. I just put in some fresh pine shavings, so the chickens should be pretty happy to hear tonight. I had to do some other winterizing here. Let's take a look here. So I also just put it's actually a poultry bag for when you butcher chickens. I just zip tied one over the fan exhaust. And then another change we made is that this used to be the access to the egg boxes, because we had paint trays that the eggs would roll down into this area. But the issue we had was that every time it rained, the paint trays would fill up with water, and beneath them, it's covered with some plywood. So we didn't want to drill any holes in the paint trays, because then the water would leak through and rot out the panels. So what I've done is I've taken out the paint trays and just filled these sections with more pine shavings. And funnily enough, the chickens seem to like that much better. For quite a while, we were getting about 16 to 17 eggs a day. So that they were much happier, far less stressed. Now that it's cooled off, as chickens do, when it gets cold during winter and there's less sunlight, they don't lay as much. These are my fake eggs, which keep the chickens from eating their own eggs, because they're made of porcelain. So, yeah, just quite a few changes as we've been having to use it, and as we see the practical means of using it, you just have to end up changing things. In terms of using it on a day-to-day basis, I used to move it every day, but it to keep the ground fresh underneath. But as I open it up for them to free range, it doesn't really need to be moved, except maybe once a month. I do have to say that it is very difficult to move, but it still moves once you get it up. My guess would be that this coop weighs about 300 to 400 pounds, somewhere in there. And it takes about all your strength to lift it up by standing on these wheel brackets and pushing up on this handle here. And then you have to slip in these brackets to keep the wheels supported. Also, I have to constantly keep the tires refilled with air, and not because they leak, but because of the weight. It really doesn't do the tires any favors. So I have considered getting bigger tires, but we'll see. They still seem to work enough right now. The chickens seem pretty happy. We have lost quite a few chickens, unfortunately, mostly to a dog, but we still have about 14, I believe. We started out with 18. So yeah, that's just an update on the Lawson Chicken Tractor. It might not be anything pretty, but it's still doing what we made it to do, and been pretty pleased with it. We'll see y'all later.